There is a particular quality to the silence just before Daniel loses time. It is not the silence before sleep, that gradual giving way loosening that most people know, where the edges of the world soften before they dissolve. This is different. This is the silence inside a single heartbeat. The room remains exactly as it was. The coffee is still in his hand. The afternoon light continues at the same angle across the kitchen table. And then 44 minutes have passed. The cup is cold. The light has moved across the floor. Daniel is sitting in precisely the position he was in before, whatever he was holding still in his hand, and the only evidence that time has moved is the clock on the wall and the temperature of the cup against his palm. He knows this is happening because he started checking the clocks. The moment he comes back, wherever he comes back to, he finds the nearest clock and subtracts. 44 minutes, every time. Not 43, not 45, 44 precisely, as though something inside him runs on a timer that no one thought to show him.
Daniel is 41 years old. He was a geography teacher for 11 years until his principal suggested, with the careful warmth of someone managing liability as much as concern, that an indefinite leave might be appropriate. The suggestion had come 3 months after Daniel lost 44 minutes in the middle of a lesson about river systems in front of 31 students and came back to an empty classroom with a dry erase marker uncapped in his hand and no memory of the preceding 3/4 of an hour. The episodes had begun 14 months earlier, October. His kitchen table, a stack of essays, a cup of coffee just poured. He remembered the smell of it, strong, slightly overbrewed. He remembered setting it down. Then the essays were stacked on the counter, the coffee was cold, and the clock said 44 minutes had passed. He told himself it was exhaustion. His daughter Clara had died 17 months before the first episode, and grief, he had been told by several people in several careful ways, does things to the body and to time. He believed this. He needed to believe it. 2 weeks later, it happened again. His GP referred him to a neurologist named Dr. Patel, whose large window overlooked a car park, and who ordered scans and an EEG and a sleep study with the systematic thoroughness of a man who believes all problems have a visible solution if you know where to look. The results were clean. No lesions, no abnormal activity, no structural explanation. Dr. Patel referred him to a psychiatrist. Dr. Okafor's office had no window. Walls the color of pale sand. 2 chairs at a slight angle, deliberately not face to face. She asked about Clara. Daniel told her about the accident, the hospital, the year of mornings that followed, waking, and the brief blank seconds before memory reconstituted itself, and then the weight returning, and the long work of getting out of bed regardless. Dr. Okafor listened with complete attention. Then she said, "The mind protects itself. When what we carry exceeds what we can hold consciously, it creates distance. What Daniel was experiencing, she suggested, was dissociation, the mind doing what it was built to do when the alternative was unbearable." She suggested a journal. Log the episodes. Look for patterns. Notice what precedes the gaps. Daniel kept the journal. He also bought a camera. a small, simple recording device. He set it up in whichever room he was working in, positioned so his full body was in frame, and pressed record whenever he sat down. He did not tell Dr. Rocaffer. Some instinct, precise and quiet and impossible to fully justify, told him that what he was about to see was not something he wanted mediated before he had formed his own understanding of it. The first 3 recordings showed the same thing. He would be visible in the frame, working, and then a slight forward settling of his posture, not dramatic, not the lurch of unconsciousness, just a releasing of the active hold, and then 44 minutes of absolute stillness, eyes open, chest rising and falling at the absolute minimum. The stillness of a house when nobody is home, not empty, but vacated, present in body, absent in everything else. He watched the footage and told himself it was reassuring. He was not sleepwalking. He was not in danger. He was simply sitting with his eyes open while time moved without him. The 4th recording was different.
43 minutes of the same stillness. And then, at minute 43, Daniel's head turned slowly toward the camera. Not a reflexive turn, not the movement of someone startled. The deliberate, unhurried turn of a man who has known about the camera since the beginning and has decided now that the time is right to acknowledge it. The eyes were wrong, not in color or shape, in the quality of what was happening behind them. The specific configuration of attention and intention that makes a person's gaze their own was not Daniel's. Whatever was looking out through Daniel's eyes at that moment looked out with the patient recognition of something that has been watching through a window for a long time, waiting for someone on the other side to finally look back. Daniel watched himself look into the camera for 53 seconds. Then the eyes closed, opened, and with the ease of someone resuming an interrupted task, his hand reached across and picked up the pen and continued writing in the journal. He had no memory of turning toward the camera, no memory of what he had been looking at when he did. He kept recording. The head turn appeared in the 6th recording, the 7th, always minute 43. Always 53 seconds of that borrowed attention directed at the lens. And then, as cleanly as a switch, back to Daniel, back to the pen and the journal and the ordinary afternoon. In the 9th recording, it spoke. Minute 43, the turn, the eyes, and then Daniel's mouth opened, and in Daniel's voice, his precise voice, the one that had explained river deltas and trade winds to 31 classes of 15-year-olds, it said, "I know you're watching."
It smiled, a small, private smile, the smile of something that has been waiting a long time for a particular conversation to begin, and finds the waiting on reflection to have been worth it. Then Daniel picked up his pen.
Daniel went to Dr. Rocaffer the following morning. He described the footage minimally, making it smaller than it was in the way people make frightening things smaller before presenting them to someone with authority over their diagnosis. She listened and spoke about derealization, the mind constructing a narrative of external agency to contain what cannot otherwise be explained, a character, a presence, something separate and nameable, because the alternative was a self less singular than the conscious mind can comfortably hold. It's a part of you, she told him, one that hasn't had another way to communicate. This is what the beginning of integration looks like.
Daniel sat across from her in the warm room and turned this over carefully. He found he could not locate the place where it was wrong. He nodded. He said he understood. 3 weeks later, in their 9th session, Dr. O'Coffer referenced the house in Minnesota. She was tracing through what he had told her, the geography of his formative years, the landscape of the things that shaped him. She said, "The quality of light you described in that house in Minnesota." She continued. Daniel heard very little of it. He had grown up in Ohio. He had been to Minnesota once for a conference in a hotel near an airport. There was no house. There was no Minnesota light. He had described nothing of the kind because there was nothing to describe. "Where did you hear about Minnesota?" he asked. She looked at her notes, turned a page, looked up. "You told me," she said. "3rd session, in quite a lot of detail." He drove home with both hands on the wheel and the radio off. He went inside and found the journal, the blue hardback notebook he had filled since Dr. Okaffo's 2nd session, and turned to the entry from the day of their 3rd appointment. His handwriting, unmistakably. The curl at the baseline of his lowercase g that a teacher had told him he would grow out of. His hand, his pressure, his ink. A childhood in Minnesota, a house on a street called Larimer, north-facing kitchen light the color of watered milk in the mornings. A mother who hummed 4 bars of the same song each evening while washing dishes, always stopping before the 5th, as if 4 bars were all she had ever known or all she ever needed. A red bicycle in the yard, wood smoke in October. He read it 3 times. The detail was vivid in the way that only real memory is vivid. Specific, sensory, apparently arbitrary. Not invented. Recorded. It was someone else's childhood. Written in his hand. In his journal. In a house he had not left. He turned through the rest of the journal. He found 4 more entries he had not written. Scattered through the months, brief, precise, written in the spaces between his own entries, as though the gaps in his day had been used for something else. The entries were not frightening in their content. They were not threatening or violent or strange. They were simply the quiet, domestic record of someone going about a life, noting the weather, the quality of the afternoon, a thought about a book. Someone living in Daniel's days without Daniel's knowledge and finding them apparently worth recording. He sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Then he opened the journal to a blank page. He picked up his pen. He wrote, in the center of the page, "I know you're there." He put the pen down. He sat back. He looked at the words. He waited. The episode came at 8:10. He felt it the way he always felt it, the silence between 1 second and the next, and then nothing. He came back at 8:54. The journal was open in front of him. Below what he had written, in handwriting that was his and was not his, recognizably his letter forms, but with a quality of pressure and angle that was fractionally, unmistakably different, was a single line. It said, "I know. I've been waiting for you to say so." Below that, after a small gap, "She would have been proud of you for still being here. She told me to tell you that. She said you would need to hear it eventually." Daniel read it 4 times. He read it the way you read something you cannot yet decide the shape of, whether it is the most comforting thing you have ever been told, or the most disturbing, or whether in this particular case, those two things are the same thing and always were. He called Dr. Okafor in the morning. He told her about the journal, all of it, the entries he had not written, the Minnesota childhood that was not his, and the message he had found when he came back at 8:54. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, carefully, "Daniel, I want you to come in today, not your usual time, today." He said, "I'll be there." He closed the journal. He looked at it for a moment. The blue hardback cover, worn at the corners from months of handling. Then he put it in his bag. He would bring it with him. He would show her all of it. He did not know what Dr. Okafor would make of the message. He did not know whether what had written it was a disassociated part of his own mind, constructing comfort from what he needed to hear, borrowing Clara's voice because he had loved it and lost it, and the grief of that had cracked him open far enough for something else to come through. He did not know whether it mattered which one was true. He picked up his keys, he went to the door. He looked back at the kitchen, the table, the clock on the wall, the chair where he had sat when he came back at 8:54 and found the words that were and were not his. "She would have been proud of you for still being here." He stood in the doorway for a moment. Then he went to get help.